There are moonshots. And then there's this. A small American car company with limited resources decides it's going to design a mid-engine supercar. Not outsource it entirely. Not badge engineering something from overseas. Actually build it. Chassis development in Italy. Testing in Germany. American V8 power at its core. It sounds like the kind of idea that would get laughed out of a boardroom. Instead, it got funded. Over the next 3 years, AMC poured real money and real engineering talent into a machine that would reach nearly 170 miles per hour and debut on European soil as a serious performance car. They called it the AMX/3. And the story of how it came together and why it disappeared just as quickly is even more dramatic than the car itself. If you enjoy stories about the moments when car companies swing far outside their weight class and almost pull it off, you'll want to stay with this one. Make sure you're subscribed, because this isn't just a what if story. It's a how did this even happen story. It all started when AMC decided its image needed a radical reset. Why AMC needed something radical? By the end of the 1960s, American Motors Corporation was surviving, but survival wasn't the same as dominance. Ford, GM, and Chrysler controlled the headlines and the horsepower wars. AMC carved out space by being clever, efficient, and occasionally scrappy. Cars like the Rambler sold on value. That strategy kept the lights on, but it didn't inspire anyone, and that was the problem. AMC leadership knew that image mattered. Younger buyers were gravitating toward performance, toward style, toward something that felt exciting. The Javelin and AMX helped, but those were still front-engine muscle cars fighting in crowded territory. If AMC wanted attention on a global scale, it needed something completely unexpected. The idea that began circulating internally wasn't modest. Instead of refining what they already knew, why not leapfrog the competition? Why not build a mid-engine car, the same layout used by Ferrari and Lamborghini, and show the world that AMC could play in that arena too? That thinking led to one of the boldest development programs ever attempted by an American automaker of that size. AMC committed roughly $2 million to the effort, a serious investment for a company operating on tight margins. And rather than trying to fake a European exotic, they went straight to the source. They recruited some of the best minds in Italy. The International Dream Team. At the center of the AMX/3 project was Giotto Bizzarini, the same engineer who had helped shape the Ferrari 250 GTO and later worked on Lamborghini's early V12 efforts. If you were trying to build credibility in the supercar world, you couldn't ask for a stronger resume. Bizzarini got to work immediately. He was involved in the chassis layout, suspension geometry, and overall mechanical development. The structure was a steel monocoque with independent suspension at all 4 corners, designed for stability at serious speed. This wasn't a styling exercise. It was engineered to run hard. Fabrication work was handled in Italy by Autocostruzioni SD, led by Salvatore Diamante. Even Ital Design, the studio founded by Giorgetto Giugiaro, contributed during development. What started as an American branding exercise had quietly turned into a cross-continental collaboration. Then Germany entered the picture. Prototypes were sent to BMW for evaluation and high-speed testing. Under that scrutiny, weaknesses surfaced. Early chassis welds lacked the rigidity needed for sustained speed. Brake performance needed improvement. The clutch and structural stiffness required refinement. Instead of dismissing the car, BMW engineers worked alongside the Italian team to reinforce the structure, revise braking components, and improve durability. By the time those updates were implemented, the AMX/3 wasn't just an ambitious idea anymore. It was becoming a properly sorted mid-engine performance machine, developed with input from Italy, Germany, and the United States. And at the center of it all sat a very American heart, the American heart. At the core of the AMX/3 sat something very familiar to AMC engineers, a 390 cubic inch V8. This wasn't an exotic Italian V12 or a high-strung racing motor. It was AMC's own 6.4-liter V8, the same basic engine used in the AMX and other performance-oriented models of the era. In this application, it produced around 340 horsepower and roughly 430 pounds-feet of torque. Those numbers might not sound outrageous today, but in 1970, in a mid-engine chassis weighing about 3,300 pounds, that combination was serious. Period testing suggested 0 to 60 miles per hour, times in the mid 5-second range, and top speed estimates reached roughly 160 to 170 miles per hour, depending on gearing and aerodynamic setup. That put the AMX/3 squarely in European territory. Power was fed through a T-Forti 4-speed manual transaxle developed by Ottio Melara in Italy after a conventional ZF unit proved too long for the tight packaging. 4-wheel disc brakes handled stopping duties, and independent suspension all around gave the car composure at speed that surprised people who expected it to behave like a muscle car. Bizzarini reportedly took one of the prototypes to Monza for high-speed testing and fine-tuning. That alone says something. You don't bring a car to Monza unless you believe it belongs there. And what made the AMX/3 fascinating wasn't just that it was quick. It was that the performance didn't feel theoretical. After structural reinforcements and refinement, it behaved like a serious machine. The mid-engine layout delivered balance. The chassis, once strengthened, provided stability at speed. It wasn't a straight-line bruiser pretending to be exotic. It was genuinely engineered to compete. By early 1970, AMC had something that didn't just look the part. It could back it up. Rome, New York, and the shock factor. When AMC unveiled the AMX/3 in Rome on March 23, 1970, the setting alone sent a message. This wasn't a Detroit Auto Show debut. It was a European stage in the heart of exotic car territory. Just weeks later, it appeared again in New York. The reaction was immediate. The car was low, barely over 43 inches tall, wide, and sharply wedged. Pop-up headlights preserved the clean nose. Air intakes and louvers weren't decorative afterthoughts. They were integrated into the shape. Some prototypes featured a rear hatch, while others exposed more of the mid-mounted engine through glass. From almost any angle, it looked like it belonged among Ferraris and Lamborghinis of the era. And that was the surprise. Journalists expected an American novelty. What they saw instead was a legitimate mid-engine performance car, developed with European expertise. The proportions were right. The stance was right. The numbers were right. For a brief window, AMC had everyone's attention. The company that built practical compacts was now showing a car capable of 170 miles per hour. It wasn't a gimmick, and it wasn't unfinished. It was nearly production ready. But attention doesn't pay for production tooling. Back in the United States, reality was setting in. And if you're enjoying how wild this story is getting, make sure you're subscribed, because nobody expected what would happen next. The cost of ambition. Developing the AMX/3 had already cost AMC roughly $2 million. For Ford or GM, that kind of expenditure could be absorbed across massive product lines. For AMC, it was significant. Worse, the projected retail price was climbing. Estimates suggested the AMX/3 would need to sell for around $12,000 to $14,000 to make sense financially. At the time, that placed it deep into Ferrari territory and well above Corvette pricing. Convincing buyers to spend that kind of money on a car wearing an AMC badge was going to be difficult. There were other pressures building as well. Safety and emissions regulations were tightening in the United States. Certification costs would add complexity and expense. And AMC, despite the excitement around the car, still relied on practical models for survival. A halo supercar might elevate the brand image, but it wouldn't keep factories running if it failed. By mid-1970, the decision was made. The program was canceled before full production began. 6 complete cars were built, along with several unfinished chassis. Instead of filling showrooms, the AMX-3 became a footnote, scattered into private hands, quietly preserved. The legacy, remarkably, all 6 original cars still exist today. Some reside in private collections. Others have appeared at major concours, events, and museums. Over time, they've shifted from canceled prototypes to coveted artifacts. Auction results tell part of that story. Individual examples have sold for well over $1 million, a dramatic contrast to the original projected retail price that once seemed so ambitious. What was once considered too expensive for AMC buyers is now considered historically priceless by collectors. The car's influence also stretches further than most people realize. One unused chassis eventually formed the basis for the striking Bizzarini Manta-inspired concept known as the Revolta. More broadly, the AMX-3 stands as proof that mid-engine ambition wasn't limited to Europe decades before the Corvette C8 made headlines for the same layout shift. For enthusiasts, the AMX-3 represents a rare moment when corporate caution stepped aside and creativity took the wheel. It's remembered not as a corporate misstep, but as a bold statement that briefly blurred international lines in pursuit of something extraordinary. The AMX-3 still fascinates because it feels improbable. An underdog American brand partnering with Italian engineers and German testers to build a mid-engine supercar capable of running with Europe's elite. That sounds like fiction, but it happened. It didn't reach production, and it didn't transform AMC's future. What it did leave behind was something more enduring, proof that ambition isn't reserved for the biggest players in the room. If you enjoy stories like this, the forgotten projects, the near misses, the cars that almost changed everything, make sure you're subscribed. Because sometimes the most interesting machines aren't the ones that won. They're the ones that dared to try.